Good evening. Welcome to Sunday at 7. I'm so glad you're here. This is our relaxed Sunday space. It's a chance to wind down the weekend, share stories, and enjoy good company. Each week, we'll share stories, reflections, and plenty of friendly conversation. All in a relaxed Sunday atmosphere. Pop a hello in the chat, grab yourself a brew and settle in. I will love hearing your thoughts as we go along. Let's get started with this week's Sunday at 7. Good evening. Hello there. So, hi Kels, Dom, OG, and Levi. Good evening. Not going to go straight into my, I forgot what you call it, but I'm not going to go straight into my thing for this week. I'm just going to see if we can get a few more coming in before I start, so I don't have to come back to the beginning. But I'll do a little bit of reflection on last week's programme. If you did watch last week, and hopefully you watched the bit where I was on about the schoolmaster who came into my life when I went to Bridlington school. Well, after I finished the stream last week, I sat and thought about this schoolmaster, because I haven't for a long time, but because I'd spoken about him, I thought I'll just have a quick yeah, Rangers didn't do very well, did they? Anyway, I just thought I evening Black-Hearted Queen, I got thinking about Mr. Breer, who was the teacher, who befriended me, and he befriended me the whole of my childhood, really, from 7 or 8 until I left to join the army in 1966. And I thought about him, and I thought to myself, I wonder why he got so fatherly, if that's the right word, you know. And then I thought, well, yeah, now thinking about it, realizing or knowing what my mother's younger life consisted of, he might have thought that he was my father. It sounds like some hour Star Wars, doesn't it? He might have thought he was my father, but I know he wasn't. He didn't. So there you go. That was just something that came to me from last week's bit of a chat. Good evening, Benefit Britain. I suppose I could go BB. It sounds like bed and breakfast, doesn't it? Yeah, so what I'm going to do is, where I left off last week, I was on the beach in 1966 at Bridlington, which was my my last summer on the beach at Bridlington in my younger days. And on the 31st of August of 1966, I clambered aboard a local train from Bridlington to Hull, and I came to the Army Careers Office in Hull. It was my third visit to there, but on this visit, I was going to be taking the oath and, taking the shilling, or whatever they want to call it now, or what they used to call it was taking the shilling. But so I stood there with my hand in front of me, and there was 2 other young lads with me on that day, and we stood there and we gave the oath to serve our Queen and whatever, you know. So that was on the 31st of August. And once we'd done that, once we'd sworn the oath, we were then in the army, basically. And I can remember the sergeant who was dressed up to nines, you know, he really looked the part. I think he'd got dressed up for us, but there you go. So, you know, he gave us a bit of a pep talk and said, you know, you're starting your new life, your new career, hope you do well and all that. And he said, within the week, you'll be getting a letter through the post telling you where you go, when you go, and how you go. Well, we all have our own opinions, OG, so there you go. So, yeah. So swore, got the little pep talk and got back on the train and went back to Brid. Went to see my mum, and she was working in the cafe at the time. Went to see her and we had a bit of a fish and chip lunch and a cup of tea. And then I went home. Mum followed later on, about 9:30 at night, she got home. Anyway, 3, 4, 5 days later, I'm not quite sure how long it was, but a brown envelope popped through the door. Now, I wasn't the one to go looking to see who the mail was for, because it never was for me. It was all this, you know, brown envelopes. It was my mum. Anyway, my mum went to pick the post up, and she shouted up to me, Paul, there's a letter for you. Wow, I'd never had a letter. First time I'd ever had a letter come through the post box with my name on it. So, rushed downstairs and ripped open the letter, and there it was. There was a travel warrant, which was basically a ticket, a railway ticket from Bridlington to Aldershot, down in, I think Aldershot's in Middlesex. I'm not quite sure now, I can't remember, but it's down that way anyway. And there was a £2 postal order and a letter, an accompanying letter. And the letter said basically, you know, you need to be on this train at this time, and you need to get to London and get to the Waterloo railway station for this time, because that's when your train leaves. So, you know, excited as whatever, all this stuff. So, of course, the first thing I did was go and cash the postal order, because that was my first pay from the army, a £2 postal order. So there I was, clutching my £2 and me travel warrant, went back home, and I can't remember the exact date that I had to catch the train, but it was round about the 14th of September 1966, and we went. The day arrived, and we went to the railway station at Brid, and Mum got a return ticket from Brid to York, and I handed in my travel warrant and got a ticket, and wasn't a return, it was a single ticket. And in those days, you know, you just got one ticket. You didn't get 10 or 11 bloody tickets. You got one ticket. Good evening, Paul. Nice to see you, mate. So there we are on the station at Bridlington, waiting for the little steam locomotive to take us through to York. Anyway, we got on the train. Now, bearing in mind, the furthest I'd ever been was from home was Hull on the train. I'd never been any further than that. I'd never left the county on a train. So it was a new experience for me. And we sat on the train. I can't remember how long it took. It took about an hour or so. But we had a bit of a chat, and my mum was getting a little bit upset that I was leaving home at 15. And, she was, like mums do, pushing back the hair and all those type of things. Anyway, she was getting a little bit emotional. We arrived at York, and well, actually, we didn't arrive at York. We had to. The train from Brid to York actually goes Brid to Scarborough, and then you change to go to York. And sometimes you change, and I can't remember the station, but there's a little station before Scarborough. Sometimes you change there to catch the train to York. Sometimes you can go into Scarborough. This time we went into Scarborough, caught the train for York, and away we went. And again, I don't know, maybe an hour and a half later, we arrived at the big city terminus of York. And you've got to remember, I'm 15 years old, never been out of Brid, basically. Never seen a big train. I'd only seen little trains that come through Brid. And we get on the platform at York Station, and Seamer, thank you, Dom. It's Seamer. Been there a few times, changed trains, but later on in my life. So there we are. We're stood on the station at York, and I'm fairly certain that it was platform 1. We didn't have to go across a bridge or anything. It was when you get into York, if you go in through the front gate at York, the track closest to you goes south, and you go over the bridge and you go north. So we were going, well, we weren't, I was going south. So we got on the platform and sat waiting for the train to come. And, Mum's getting more and more upset and emotional about her favourite son leaving home. So anyway, it's the train came and we said our goodbyes, got a couple of kisses and whatever, and got on the train, put my little suitcase, and when I say little suitcase, even in Clary, it was a little suitcase. I didn't have a lot of stuff. In the letter from the army, they told me what I need to take, basically. And it was basically all I needed to take was some soap and I can't remember what else, but it was basically soap and a flannel and towels. And that was basically all you needed to take. So Mum was getting a little, before I got on the train, she was saying, why are you only, you haven't got any stuff in that case. What are you going to do? And I said, well, I don't know, but that's what it said. So I've done what it says. As a good little boy, did as I was told. And anyway, it gets on the train, and in those days, you could pull down the window on the carriage door, and I leant out. Give my mum a quick kiss, and the train went beep beep, or makes that silly noise as they do. Blew his whistle, and bump, up we popped. Now, like I say, I'd never been on a big train before, and this was bloody big. It was about 14 carriages or 15 carriages long. It was big. And of course, again, you had Up at the front, you had 3 or 4 carriages that were first class, and then all the rest were second class. And you had a buffy car. I don't know if you can call it a buffy car because they didn't do buffy stuff in those days. But it was a buffy car. They were, you could go in the thing. And Kels, yes, it was steam, sweetheart. We didn't have any other type of trains at that time. British Rail hadn't brought in all those wham bam, thank you ma'am trains. So it was a big steam train. And out it pulls out of York, waving out the window to my mum. Tears are running down my eyes. Or not my eyes, down my face. Tears are running down my mum's face. And went and got a seat. Put my little suitcase above my head. And got settled down, basically. Now, I'm 15 years old, never been on a train. And it was just a brand new experience for me. Everything was new. I was looking out the window, looking at York as it passes by, and you could see if you looked out the window, you could see the steam or smoke or whatever you want to call it coming down the train and past the windows. So I sat on there for, I don't know, quite a while, but we ended up in Doncaster, and that was the first stop, was Doncaster. And we pulled into Doncaster, and stupid me thinking that was a quick trip. I thought we were there, but we wasn't. It was Doncaster. So anyway, we sat there for quite a while. Lots more people got on. Evening, Bobby. Lots more people got onto the train, and up it pops again. So again, I'm excited because I'm watching out the window, watching all the sights of Donny go by, and away we trundled away. Now I can't remember exactly how many stops the train was making before it got to King's Cross, but there was quite a few. It was main line, and there was quite a few stops between York and King's Cross. So anyway, it was going to be a few hours. I don't know how long it was, but I was going to be sat there for a few hours. I hadn't got anything to read. I hadn't taken a book. I hadn't thought about it. If I'd have thought about it, I'd have probably taken a book or something to read, but I hadn't. So I'm sat there and excited, thinking, So I thought, well, I'm going to have a walk around the train and see what it looks like. So I did. I had a walk up and down the carriages. Like I said, it was 12 or 13 carriages. But when you got to the front, where the 3 first class carriages were, you couldn't go through the door. There was a guy there. And you weren't allowed in to the first class compartments. But you could see through the window, and of course I could see that it was a lot more plush. They had comfy seats, and really comfy seats. And Sharon, you want to put on some soothing music for them, sweetheart. You'd have thought they'd have been listening to my dulcet tones, and it would calm them down, because it calms me down some at no end. Anyway, so I could see that the first class compartment had really comfy seats, and they all had tables, And I thought, well, we haven't got bloody tables in the second class. What's that all about? Anyway, I walked backwards then. So walking backwards and found where the loo was. And there wasn't a loo at every carriage, but every second carriage, I think there was a toilet. And away we went for... Took me ages to walk from the front of the train to the back of the train. And it wasn't packed, There was a fair few people on, but it wasn't packed. There were no people. Standing or out like that. Everybody had a seat, And Kels, on this part of the train trip, there were no other. Well, there might have been soldiers on, but I wouldn't have known. But I never saw any young lads like me with that look on the face of I don't know, it's not trepidation, you know that. I'm on a trip. I'm on the first steps of a new life, and I'm excited. And so I went forward. I went back. I found the place where you could get a bit of snap, and you could get a cup of tea. And I don't know if it was a packet of crisps, can't remember, but I got a cup of tea anyway. And it was, a cup with a saucer. It wasn't a plastic thing. It was a cup with a saucer. And there was a guy stood there serving the tea. Can't remember how much it was, but I paid him out of me £2 that I had in my pocket. And I had my cup of tea. Went back to my seat. And again, started looking out the window, watching everything pass. And everything was new. I was seeing new places, and it was just mind-blowing. And then I thought, well, I'm going to go and have a stand at the door. Now, in those days, I was a smoker. I know I was only 15, but I've been smoking since I was 9 years old, so I was a smoker. Now, I didn't have 20 cigs in my pocket. I had a pack of 5 Park Drive and a box of matches. And so I went out to where the carriage door was, the outside door, pulled down the window, struck up my fag, and stood there looking out of the window and having a smoke. And, every so often I would stick my head out the window and look up the train, and all the smoke would be coming down, and I'd look backwards and you could see the whole length of the train. Exciting, so exciting, I can't explain it. And then we did 2 or 3 stops. Can't remember exactly how many it was, but I think Retford was one. And I'm not sure whether it was Peterborough, but it was somewhere like that on that line. And we pulled into King's Cross. Well, before we pulled into King's Cross, I don't know if anybody's been on the train to King's Cross, but I presume you have. And you'll know that there's a couple of long tunnels you go through as you come out into King's Cross. And of course, I'd got back up, and I was back at the door having another cigarette, and had the window open, and then we went into this tunnel, and it was just pitch black. You couldn't see a bloody thing. You could see the red end of my cigarette, but that's all you could see. And of course, all the smoke and dust and the smell of the steam, everything was there, but it was all coming into the window. So I had to dock my fag and close the bloody window, and went and sat back down and watched as we came out the tunnel and drew into King's Cross. So gets off the train at King's Cross with my little suitcase in hand. There's a song there, isn't there? Somewhere. Anyway, off I popped down this thing, and the biggest test was to come, because the biggest test was going to be how I was going to get from King's Cross to Waterloo. And so I stopped and asked the guard of the train, how do I get to Waterloo? And he said, you go down there, young man, to that thing where it says underground, and you go down on the underground, and you'll see a map, and it'll tell you how to get there. So there we go, bloody underground. Wow. up a pop, goes down the stairs at King's Cross and down into the underground, and it was like a rabbit warren. There were bloody things over there and things over here, and Northern Line, Western Line, Piccadilly Line, or wherever it was, Central Line. There were everywhere you looked, there was a bloody opening to go down. No idea which one I was meant to be on. So there was a guy stood at the ticket place within. It was a big round place within the underground at King's Cross, and I said, I went up and I said, can you point me in the direction of a train a train to get me to Waterloo? So he said, yes, son, there you go. This is how you get there. You go through that tunnel there, and I think it was a Central Line. Not quite sure, but I think it was a Central Line. And he said, you go down there, you want to be on platform 1, and every train that comes in on that platform will take you in the right direction. Don't get on the other platform, because that'll take you in the other direction, and it'll take you all day to get right the way around to get to Waterloo. You want to be on the other platform. So I said, okay. So platform 1, up a pop. Go down, get onto platform 1, and the train comes whizzing in, whoosh, and oh, fucking hell, what's happening here? Wetting myself. Anyway, doors slide open, I get on the train, and again I'm confronted with a bloody map. And I think, oh God, how the hell am I going to work this out? So I didn't know how many stops or anything, or whether I had to change. So there was a guy sat there, and he looked all right. So I went across to him and said, am I on the right train for Waterloo? And in his, I was going to say Cockney accent, but it wasn't. It was in a funny accent, because, I'd never heard different accents before. I'd only heard a Yorkshire accent. So it was in a different accent. And he said, yeah, you want to be on 4 stops from here. Might have been 10 stops. I don't know how long it was, but he told me exactly how many stops. He said, when you get to that stop, it'll say Waterloo. Yeah, okay. So he said, you won't miss it, because it's all the way down the platform. It'll say Waterloo, 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 Waterloo. Anyway, so gets to Waterloo and gets up, train opens, I get off on the platform. And as I got off, right opposite on the wall was a cigarette machine. And I thought, wow, it's my lucky day. So I got the change out of my pocket. I can't remember what it was, 2 bobbers, so half a crown. I don't know what it was. And I bought another 5 Park Drive. Slipped them in my pocket and looked for the way out and followed the way out signs. Again, it was like a rabbit warren. You came out off the platform, and there was a corridor there, a corridor there, corridor there, and and anyway, I found the one that said Main Line, Waterloo Main Line, and went there, up the steps, or if you can call them steps, up the escalator, or whatever you want to call that thing, that wooden thing that went round and round and round and round. And up I goes into Waterloo. So again, another huge bloody station, massive, and packed. There were people everywhere. Oh God, what am I going to do here? So again, I went to get hold of a guard, or whatever you call these people in uniforms with a hat on, And I said to him, I need to be on the train for Aldershot, and my train, according to this letter, my train leaves at 10 past the hour, or whatever hour it was. I can't remember the time, but so I told him what I wanted and where I wanted to be, and he said, right, what you want to do is you want to go down there, and I think platform 3. Get to platform 3, and that's where your train will be. So up I pop up, I'm wandering, young 15-year-old lad, like this all the time, looking round because you just couldn't believe how bloody big it was. Anyway, got my little suitcase and found my platform, and the big sign said Aldershot. Didn't just say Aldershot, there was a lot more stations, but one of the stations named was Aldershot. So I went and found myself a seat on the platform and sat down and just basically waited. And as I'm waiting there, I could see other young lads, round about my age, with a little suitcase, or some had a kit bag and some had a big suitcase, but you could see that they were all basically in the same boat as me. Well, we weren't in a boat, we were at the railway station, but you know what I mean. You could see that they were all had that look on the face, the look of excitement, trepidation, thrill, whatever it's called. They all had that look. And I'm just moving my notes up because I've forgotten what I'm starting to say. So, where was I? Yeah, so I sat on the bench at Waterloo, watching all the people queuing up to get to the train. The train wasn't there. It hadn't actually come in yet. And I can't remember how long I had to wait, but it was a fair while I had to wait. So I just sat there and struck up another cigarette, basically. Sat and waited. And so I sat and thought, well, I think that's the hardest bit of the journey done. Or I'm presuming that's the hardest bit of the bloody journey. I don't know what the trip like to Aldershot, but it can't be as bad as going through the middle of bloody London when you've never seen a city as big in your life. And so what started my day? I started as a boy with a suitcase, and by the time I'd reached London, I began to feel like a soldier. Silly as it sounds, but I was like a soldier really, because I was I was reading the orders. Excuse me. I was reading the paper, which told me what I had to do, what I didn't have to do, how to do this and how to do that. And so there you go. I sat there for quite a while, saw lots of young kids, children, some scruffy, some dolled up. I wasn't scruffy, but I wasn't dolled up, I didn't have that kind of gear. So eventually the train pulled into Waterloo. Now, stupid me sat there watching this train, and there's no steam train on it. It's these carriages are coming in, and I'm thinking, where's the fucking engine? How are they getting here? And then I realised that the engine was at the other end, because Waterloo is a terminus. It's not a through route. The trains come in and then they go out, a bit like Hull. It's a terminus. So of course they have to come in backwards to go forwards. Anyway, this train pulls in, and doors open up, and all these people get off and start legging it, and then you hear of an announcement. The next train on Blackburn 1 is the XX going to whatever, calling at this, that, and the other. And I heard Aldershot mentioned, so I knew I was the right train. What I couldn't understand was the carriage wasn't like the carriages that I'd been on from York to King's Cross, because the York to King's Cross had, I think, 3 doors. And you got on and you know, there were chairs, or whatever you want to call them, seating on that side and seating on that side for the whole length. However, these trains had a door, had about 12 doors. Oh, what's this? What kind of a train is this? Anyway, I went, he said, you know, you can now board or whatever. And I went across and opened the door. And what it is, it's like a little passage. And on it, you've got a bench down one side and a bench down the other. And above it is the place where you put your gear. Your cases, when I say gear, you know, cases and stuff. So, gets me seat and up pops my case onto the top and sat and waited. And then another lad got in and another lad got in and another lad got in, all round about my age. Now, you know, I wasn't one to get my mouth going or out like that and strike up conversations or whatever. But anyway, there was 4 of us sat in this carriage, in this hallway carriage thing, and a guy from the railway came down and started shutting the doors as he's coming down. And then the next thing, you hear the whistle, the guy with a whistle down the bottom of the end of the train, and then the train starts to pull out, and that whistled. And so I was on the last leg of my journey from Waterloo to Aldershot. Now, I seem to remember it was about an hour and a half, 2-hour journey. And sat there, and then, you know, we basically started to break the ice, you know, between the 4 of us. And so the smallest of the lads, and, you know, I wasn't tall, but he was shorter than me, he was a lot smaller than me, started to speak. What the fuck's happening here? I can't understand a word he's saying. I thought he was foreign. So one of the other lads said something like, where you from or whatever. And he said he was Scottish. I think he said he was Scottish anyway. Anyway, that's so. You know, we start chatting between us. Oh, what time did you set up this morning or whatever? And where have you come from and where have you come from? One had come from Essex somewhere. I think one had come from Birmingham way. I'm not quite sure. And then there was this other lad, the Scottish lad. Now, the one from Essex said, I set up at 10 o'clock this morning. The one from Birmingham said, I set up at lunchtime. And the one from Scotland, in this real Scottish twang, said, I set up yesterday. Yesterday? Well, you come by horse and cart, basically. And he said, no. He said, and I can't explain how I started to understand, but I could get the gist of what he was saying. The accent was starting to get into my head, and I could start understanding. But he said, "No, I'm from the Shetlands," and he said I had to set off yesterday to catch a ferry to get to. Can't remember where it was. Anyway, he ended up the next day at Edinburgh and caught the train from Edinburgh to King's Cross. Then, of course, I said, "Well, what time did you get into King's Cross?" And he said at the time, and I said, "Well, I got into King's Cross at that time. And the train I was on had come from Edinburgh. So you must have been on it." Well, I never saw you. Or if I did, it never tweaked. Anyway, so we're sitting there and it came up in the conversation about cigarettes. And so I said, "Yeah, I smoke." And one of the other lads said he smokes. The lad from Scotland didn't smoke. The lad from Essex smoked. And so the lad from Essex says, "Yeah, I smoke, but unfortunately, I haven't got any cigarettes because my mum took all me whatever." Simple Paul, "Oh, it's all right, I've got a pack." So gave him one of mine. So we lit up, open the door, the window again, push the window down. And of course, again, all the steam and whatever started coming into the windows, and you could get that smell of a coal-fired train or whatever it is, trundling along, and you could hear the clickety-click, clickety-click, clickety-click as you're going along. So you could tell, when it picked up speed, and you could tell when it got slow because the click-click of the wheels changed. If it was going fast, it would be clickety-click, clickety-click, clickety-click. And if it was slow, it'd be clickety-click, clickety-click. I learnt in later life that the clickety-click was the joints on the lines. So I didn't know at that time. I just thought it was some kind of fucking music. But there you go. I thought it was what trains did. And so sat there, we're having a cigarette, we're having a bit of a chat, not much of a chat, because I think we were all a little bit apprehensive of what we were going to be meeting when we got to Aldershot. And so this lad from Essex said, "Yeah, my mum made me go for a haircut yesterday." I said, "Yeah, so did mine." And the other lad, "Yeah, so did mine." And the Scottish lad said, "Yeah, my dad made me go for a haircut." He said, they won't want you with long hair, so you have to have a haircut." So we'd all had this haircut the day before, or a couple of days before, or whatever. So basically, it's in the mid-60s, so everybody's walking around with bloody hair like women, There's me with hair like nothing. And the other three exactly the same. So we sat on the train. The lad from Birmingham got his suitcase down, opened his suitcase up and got out some sandwiches. Wow, never thought of that. Mum didn't make me any sandwiches. Anyway, he shared them out. We all had a sandwich or whatever. There were no tea out because those trains didn't have buffet cars or out like that. And not knowing, I hadn't bought a bottle of popper out on the station. So we had the sandwich and the chat and whatever, and the time trundled away. And a couple of hours later, I think it was, and you have, because there's no intercom around, there's nobody shouting, the next stop is whatever. You had to keep your eye out for where you was. And, so every stop we would look, it's this one, it's this one. And we knew how many stops it was before we got to Aldershot. And anyway, time comes and we'll pull into Aldershot. Door opens, we all get out. We're all stood there on the platform. The guys come up and shut all the doors, blew his whistle, and off pops the train. And, we were just stood on the platform because we'd been told there would be somebody there to meet us. So, of course, we stood like dickheads waiting for somebody to come along and say, it's this way. Anyway, when the train had gone, you could see over to the other side, which was the main side of the station. You could see over the other side a couple of men in uniform with a little bit of a crowd of other youngsters with him. So then we had to go and look to see how we got from this side of the station to the other side of the station. And of course it was a stairs, so up the stairs, down the stairs, and down, and walked down, and this big guy in a suit, well, wasn't in a suit, he was in his army suit. When I say in a suit, he was in his army suit, and he came along and said, are you boys the ones for the catering college? So I said, yeah, I am. And the other Smith said, yeah, he is. And the other two said, no, we're going to, I don't know where it was. It was a different place anyway than us. So there was only me and the other lad from Scotland who were the catering corps, going to catering college. So I said, right, go over there and stand with that crowd there. You two go over there and stand with that crowd. Your transport will be along soon. Anyway, we had to stand in with a load of other young lads, and quiet as lambs. No, nothing was spoken. We didn't dare speak. And anyway, we had to wait, and another train pulled in on the other side, and some more got out, came across, and he sorted them out. You're in this group, you're in that group. Anyway, I think it was two more trains came in. They all got off the trains, and we got our crowd. And I would think there was about 20, 25 of us in this crowd. And these two soldiers who were basically telling us the ins and outs of whatever. I don't know why I'm looking over there, because you're over there. But anyway, so they said, right, what I want you to do is I want you to go outside, and I want you to form yourselves up into 3 ranks. Now, I knew what 3 ranks was because I've been in the Army Cadet Force. So I knew, you had to go and form up in a line. And so we had 3 lines of kids, probably 7 or 8 in a line. I can't remember exactly. And stood there. And then these 2 soldiers came out. And I think what happened is, I think as they came out of the railway station through the door, out onto the outside of the railway station, basically, I think they left something behind, because there were 2 different guys. Same people, but they were two different guys. And they started shouting, I want you to do this, and I want you to do, and you know, fucking shitting myself, basically. And so he got us stood like bowling alley pins, stood there on the front of the railway station, and one was stood in front, and the other one went round the back, and he walked along the back, and you could hear him saying, "You need a fucking haircut. You need a fucking haircut. You need a fucking haircut." And it was basically every single one of us needed a haircut. Now, bearing in mind, we'd all had one the day before, but it wasn't good enough. We all had to have a bloody haircut. So, you know, after him shouting and bawling and whatever, and then he said, right, I want you to get onto that coach there and we'll go to the college. And you know, off we pop. Now, everybody, you know, when you get on coaches, everybody tries to get to the back seat, don't they? You know, oh, I need to get to the back seat. I don't know why they do it, but they do. Anyway, I didn't. I just sat down on the first bloody seat I found. And this Scottish lad sat next to me. And, you know, he said, that was a bit of an experience, wasn't it? I said, well, yeah, it was. A bit scary. So she said, yeah, it was a bit scary. So, off the bus or coach starts to go off, and we're talking to each other, and I said, I don't know what's going to happen next, but my name's Paul Smith. So he says, you what? I said, my name's Paul Smith. He said, well, you won't believe it. What? He said, well, I'm Keith Smith. Okay, now, what's the odds on that? Two of us on the joining up on the same day. Two Smiths. Anyway, they off the coach pops and goes along, and it seemed like a fair distance, and anyway, you could see out in the distance this tall, I was going to say skyscraper, but it's not a skyscraper. You know, it was a fairly high block of white, looked like white stone. Anyway, it was a big thing, and this soldier at the front of the coach said, "There's your new home. That's the catering college there. That big, tall building, that's the catering college." He said, "That's not all there is. There's a lot more to it, but that's the main place. But however, you're not going there today. You're going to the barracks that you're going to be in for the next 3 years, basically." And he said, the barracks are called Clayton Barracks. That's where we're going. So off we driving away, and 20, 30 minutes later, the coach pulls into an army camp, drives around a few things, and pulls onto a big, what I thought was a fucking car park, but it wasn't a car park. It was the drill square. Pulls on there. Holmes says, right, everybody up. And we all get up. And he says, right, form a squad, 3 lines, as you did at the station. Now, he ain't talking to us, he's bawling it at us, but there you go. And we'd got into these 3 ranks, stood there, and it was fairly cold, actually, but we were all there. 3 of us in a row, little suitcases at our side or kit bags, whatever. And this guy comes marching across. Well, the coach had left, and this guy comes marching across with a stick under his arm, and he comes marching across, and then a couple of other guys followed him, and he stood there. He says, "Good afternoon, and I can't remember his name, but I'm Sergeant Major, whatever, blah blah blah, and I'm going to be your regimental sergeant major for the next however months. What I want you to do is I want you to listen to this guy, to Corporal Jones. Corporal Jones sounds like bloody Dad's army. Anyway, I want you to listen to this guy. He's going to shout your name. And when he shouts your name, shout, 'Yes, sir.' And he'll come across to you and he'll give you a piece of paper that'll have your army number on it. And what I want you to do is I want you to remember that army number. And you'll be tested on it lots and lots of times. You'll be stopped. Don't be surprised if you get stopped. Somebody says, 'What's your name? What's your rank? And what's your number?' So, yeah. Anyway, this Paul Smith from Bridlington in Yorkshire. 'Yes, sir.' Over he comes and he gives me a card, and on the card is Junior Private Smith. So that was my rank and my name and the initial P. Then there was the number 240-97615. You're in Casino Platoon, Block 4, Barrack Room 3. Then he went through us all, and then he said, right. So the guy said, right, what I want you to do is go and find your accommodation and put your cases or whatever under your bed and be back out here in 20 minutes. So there you go. So that was my first day of being a soldier. A soldier. So I'd gone from a 15-year-old lad who knew knack all to a 15-year-old lad in Aldershot who knew knack all, basically. So that was my first day. That was getting from Brid to Aldershot and getting to the Army Catering College, where I spent the next 3 years, basically. So we're coming up to the hour, and I'm really surprised that I've managed to drag that out for an hour because I've got some notes here and I haven't missed anything off the notes. As far as I can see, I haven't missed anything off the notes. So there we go. So a bit of reflection on the situation was none of us knew each other. I knew Smith from Shetlands. I can't remember. Keith, I think it was, I said. I think his name was Keith, but I might be wrong on that. It's a long time ago. And so there were 20 or 30 of us, and I can't remember exactly how many there was, but there was a fair few of us. And didn't know anybody really, but we were all the same. You know, none of us knew anybody. And we were just lads on a journey, stepping into a brand new life. And that was my beginning of my army career. And there you go. So we're coming up to 8 o'clock. Has anybody got any comments they want to make, or anybody got a question they want me to answer? Because if you haven't and you think of one later, just go down below and put a comment in. nobody comments anyway, but I do look to see if anybody comments. And don't forget, down below, put that or that. It doesn't make a difference, but it's nice to see it, Leave a comment if you want to, or give me an idea what you want me to explore next week, because next week I'm going to go from being a 15-year-old lad who knew knack all and explain how the Army Catering College worked. So I'm going to be going through, hopefully in an hour, my first 3 years in the catering corps. Okay, so I've looked every minute. I know we don't get a lot in, but it gets my brain in gear, because afterwards, when I've come off, I can remember other things. So I hope you've enjoyed it, and I've given you a little bit of a taste of what I was like when I was 15. Besides young, suave, sophisticated, good-looking, young, free and single, you've got an idea of what I was. So anyway, it's going to finish now. So it's live long and prosper, and TTFN, and hopefully see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock, same channel. Me and Bobby will be on. Take care. Have a good evening. Bye. That's all for this week's Sunday at 7. Thank you so much for spending part of your Sunday evening with me. I really enjoy sharing these stories and chats with you, and I hope you'll join me next Sunday at 7 for more conversation and good company. If you've enjoyed tonight's stream, don't forget to like, subscribe and leave a comment with any ideas or feedback. I'd love to hear from you. And if you'd like to catch up on previous episodes, you'll find them all in the Sunday at 7 playlist. Have a great week ahead, and I'll see you next Sunday.